In this week's Southern Star, get your free Careers and Courses magazine full of useful advice to help you get ahead. Read about interview techniques, compiling a CV, apprenticeships, jobs in food and tourism, working beyond retirement and lots more. Don't miss your free Careers and Courses magazine in this week's Southern Star. Your West Cork, your community, your Southern Star.
Close your eyes and pull like a dog.
And a new Irish record for Phil Healy, 22.99.
Christy Cooney hands over the Sam Maguire Cup to Graham Canty, Cork All-Ireland champions for the 7th time ever.
Hello and welcome to episode 27 of the Star Sport Podcast. My name is Jack McCarran of the Southern Star and I'm joined as always by Star Sport editor Kieran McCarthy. On today's show we'll be previewing the Cork Senior Football Championship, which comes into sharp focus this weekend with a huge West Cork derby between Carbery Rangers and Castlehaven, which takes place in Rossa Park, Skibbereen, this Saturday afternoon.
Coming up in a few minutes we'll be hearing from both camps as we're joined on the line by Castlehaven talisman Brian Hurley and Carbery Rangers midfielder James Fitzpatrick ahead of what looks to be the pick of the games in round 2 of the County Senior Football Championship.
But before that, Kieran, and before I get your thoughts on a game, I suppose we should probably make reference to the brand new table we have in studio. It's pretty swanky. We now can put our notes down and not have to hold them in our hands.
It's fantastic. Like this biro, I can just rest the biro on the table and it stays there.
It's really coming up in the world.
It really is, kind of, it shows the podcast is starting to be taken seriously when we've got a table. You know, we've made it. I think we've made it.
Next thing we'll have a touch screen that we can do analysis of the weekend's games. But baby steps.
We've waited this long for a table, so by 2024 we might have that touch screen.
Okay, well, just moving on from our brand new oak table just for a moment. But Ciaran, this game is likely to be of huge significance come the business end of the season, with both teams hoping to make an impact on this year's championship.
This is a round 2 game, Jack, so this is knockout. This is kind of, as John Hayes says in this week's Southern Star, it's an old school championship game. When both Castlehaven and Carbery Rangers lost their first round games, they knew they'd been the draw for round 2. But that round 2 losers round draw, we've said before, it was like there were so many sharks in that tank, and they've both kind of, it's the biggest game you could have got out of that round 2. You've Castlehaven against Carbery Rangers, the two most consistent West Cork teams of the past decade. They've won 3 county finals in the last 8 or 9 years. The two big guns in West Cork football, and one of them will go this Saturday night. That's what we know for definite. Either Carbery Rangers or Castlehaven, one of them will be out of the championship. And for the winner, the following week they have to take on county champions St Finbarrs in a round 3 game in Bandon. So it doesn't get much easier. Both teams really have been punished for losing their round 1 games. It's a very tough track, very tough path, I suppose, forward in the championship now for both. But it's of their own making. They both lost their first round game, so they're here because of that. And
wherever I go around West Cork in the last few days, even weeks, this is the game people are talking about it. It's as if Barcelona and Real Madrid were coming to town. It's an El Clasico, a local El Clasico. People are excited, and there's going to be some crowd and atmosphere there on Saturday evening. I will, Jack. Yeah, it's 7 o'clock in Skibbereen this Saturday night. Like I was saying, they're the two most consistent teams for locally for the last I don't know how many years, and they've met 6 times in the championship since Carbery Rangers went up senior back in 2006. Castlehaven had they took the earlier bragging rights. They won county semi-finals earlier this decade. They beat Ross 2 years in a row. But in the last couple of times, Carbery Rangers have got the better Castlehaven. The latest meeting was back in 2017. So it's going to be fierce interesting going into the game on Saturday night. Carbery Rangers kind of campaign up in Division 1 of the County League, and they kind of got their act together there after that loss to Ilen Rovers in round 1 back in April. They won, I think, 4 of their next 5 games. So I suppose they got a bit of form, which they needed to, because with the greatest respect to Ilen Rovers, Ross would have been favourites for that first round game. Castlehaven, again, a shock defeat against Fermoy in the first round, and since then their league form in Division 2 has been pretty good. They've won promotion from Division 2, even though they lost the league final to Mallow there the last couple of weeks. So
But I say both teams will be kind of pretty happy with their form kind of heading into Saturday night. Worth noting too, and it's something that Brian Hurley kind of brings up when we chat to him a little later, is that there's so many Castlehaven players involved with the Cork setup. You've Brian, his brother Michael Hurley, you've Mark Collins, you've Damien Cahalane with the hurlers, you've Rory Maguire with the Cork under 20s. It's probably hard for Castlehaven to get a settled team, you know, it really is, because even going through the league, it would have been they would have been without their 5 of their main players. I suppose you could say the same for Carbery Rangers. They'd have been missing John O'Rourke and Mark Hodnett and Robbie Kiley when he's playing with Tips. So I suppose both of them, they're not really settled going into the game, but there's little room for error. They just have to hit the ground running.
Okay, then let's hear from the camps now, and starting off with Castlehaven's Brian Hurley, who joins us now.
Brian, you're back to club action with a bang this Saturday night. It's Castlehaven against Carbery Rangers in a must-win round 2 football game. How much are you looking forward to the match?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. To be honest with you, I suppose we the disappointing end with Cork, and it's the best thing to do is get back up in the horse, and I suppose there's no better than getting back up in the West Cork derby, So yeah, look, I missed a lot of club football over the last few years, so. Yeah, it's a big one, for me, and I'm just looking forward to it, to be honest with you.
What's the transition like coming back into the club scene after being away with Cork for so long? Is it hard to get back up to speed with Haven, or do you just slot in seamlessly, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's different, to be honest with you. Yeah, it's different. Like the training, I suppose, training levels, in intercounty is probably a bit faster and whatnot. But so it's easy in that way. But you're coming into the club scene and. You've very little time to kind of want to swander around or whatnot, so it's they've been lining you up there ready to get you back and let you know you've missed out on a lot, so yeah, it's like realistically we probably 2 weeks to get ourselves set and kind of get back up into, and I suppose for ourselves we've probably been missing 5 of our players due to intercounty for most of the year, so I think, first few nights was just trying to get a bit of gel back together, and I think, it certainly things start to click in the last few night sessions, right? So, yeah, it's just about getting organising and kind of, getting used to each other again, and we're looking forward to Saturday night, really.
Because like you said there's 5 of you involved in the inter-county teams, Michael Hurley, Mark Collins, Rory Maguire and Damien Cahalane as well, I suppose, and you don't have much room for error, Brian, though. You kind of have to hit the ground running on Saturday night and skip against Carbery Rangers.
Yeah, you do. It's kind of that time of the year now. It's knockout football. No matter what sport you play, if it's knockout football, you have to be on your game. And look, we I think we have to concentrate on ourselves, and we've good enough players. And if we get things right, we should be looking after our own game. And it's just about concentrating ourselves and trying to play the way we want to, and not worrying about anything else, really.
I suppose that for my loss in the first round, that was back in April, but how did you get back on track after that?
Yeah, I suppose it was a disappointing loss. I suppose we're missing a few players at the time. I think myself, Michael, Sean Deneen had very, very little done. I think we're missing a good bit. We only got together probably a week before that game as well. We were just rolling off the back of the intercounty leagues, and then came the championship, and you're straight out again. So I think the lads did well. In fairness, they got us to a league final. There's some tricky games there away from home, whatnot. They got good results in, so they've been keeping it together really. And I suppose we just come back now to bring it up another level, and as I said, hopefully come out with a good performance on Saturday evening, which probably won't be easy,
You kind of mentioned the league final there, Brian, and I suppose it's worth noting too, Castlehaven have won promotion from Division 2 and you're back up to Division 1 for next season. How important is that for you to be playing Division 1 football next year?
Yeah, it's I suppose, look, it's not in the world, you know what I mean. I think we were there as well last year, when we got to a county semi-final, which we could have got over the line, I don't think you look at, Cork are in Division 3 football and probably left an All-Ireland semi-final thereabouts behind them this year. So, look, the leagues are important in their own way of getting the I suppose, getting a bit of form going and a bit of momentum. But I don't think they're the end all. Like, it's championship football you're judged on, and if you look at us last year, I think as we went on, we progressed very well. It's very hard from speaking to the lads, like, playing football without, maybe 5 of your main players, and then trying to come into championship, and maybe fellas that were doing well all along and making progress get shafted. So it's a bit tough on some fellas, and like especially on clubs that represent the county well. But look, it's not here or there for us. It's all about Saturday evening, and that's what we're concentrating on. I think Castlehaven, Ross, they're always good championship teams, so hopefully it'll be a cracker of a game.
What makes Carbery Rangers such tough opponents?
I suppose they're so close to you, really. Like, you know what I mean? It just brings the heat up another level. I always like playing in championship games, whether it be Ross, Clan, Ilen Rovers, Skibbereen. Like, it doesn't really matter. I just love championship football. And I suppose it's just local derbies. People like to talk them up. For me and for the lads, it's another game. You know what I mean? I honestly don't mind who I play. I've missed a lot of the club football, so I'm just trying to make up for lost ground and enjoy it as much as possible.
Like you obviously, Brian, and it's worth saying as well. Like you got fire again during the championship with Cork. I presume the hope for you now is to bring that form into the club scene.
Yeah. Look, hopefully. I thought, being honest, from my own standards and what I have in my own picture, I wasn't happy with my last 2 games. So hopefully, like, I can, flip that around and bring the form back up, and hopefully that'll start on Saturday night.
Brilliant. Come here, Brian. Thanks for joining us, and best of luck
on
Saturday night.
Interesting stuff there from Brian, Kieran, and you mentioned he touched on it with the 5 Cork players coming back in. Some of the club players, they do get shafted, and that's just the nature of the game, I suppose, when you have an abundance of club players. You see it in all counties, be it hurling or football. The top clubs, when their county men come back in,
straight in,
naturally, straight. But if clubs are in it to win it, you can't be feeling too sorry for the lads.
When you're looking at the Castlehaven team, Jack, like, you're bringing Brian Hurley, Michael Hurley and Mark Collins into like the front 6, or like Mark might come back around midfield, we don't know. Like, they're inter-county standard, like, they're obviously inter-county standard, but they're top class inter-county players, so that's a boost for any setup. And I'm always interested to see how Damien Cahalane gets on. Obviously Damien played with the Cork footballers years ago, and then he switched over to the hurlers, and I'm still of the belief that he's a better footballer. I think he'd be more of an asset to the Cork footballers than with the Cork hurlers, and who knows, maybe in the future Damien might decide to throw his lot in with the footballers again, because he's a powerful presence. I could just picture him in that Cork half-back line. He's a big, strong man. He's a superb foot pass. He really has a good foot pass. He can pick a fella out from 40, 50 yards. And he's that bit of cut and thrust I like as well, that bit of devilment, and he's not afraid to put his body on the line. So I always look forward to see Damien Cahalane play football, and who knows, maybe in the future he might come back into the Cork footballers again, but he would be a huge asset. So
okay, interesting stuff, Kieran. Well, lining up opposite Brian on Saturday will be Carbery Rangers midfielder James Fitzpatrick, who spoke to us earlier about the game and how their season has gone since their loss earlier in the year to Ilen Rovers.
James, it's a big game coming up this weekend. It's Carbery Rangers against Castlehaven, County Senior Football Championship, round 2 game. It's must win. I was talking to John Hayes there for a piece for this week's Star, and he said this is old school championship. What are your thoughts on the game? Because the season is on the line, James.
Yeah, look, it's a big game, but look, I suppose, it's simply. It's a West Cork derby, I suppose, but look, it's about get into the next round. So look, it's the early stages of the championship. We haven't played with Castlehaven, then we haven't played since last April. So look, it's all about getting through to the quarterfinal, really. That's what it's about, really.
How have you regrouped since that loss to Ilen Rovers? That was a 2-9 to 1-9 defeat back in April, and I know it's a good couple of months ago now, but how have you regrouped and got back on track?
Yeah, I suppose, look, it wasn't that difficult. We knew after the Ilen Rovers game, look, we had a lot of work to do. So basically, we took a week to off, and we regrouped. We felt that maybe we had a lot of work to do in our fitness side of it. So we worked heavily in that over the last couple of months. which is great. Look, we learned a lot of stuff from the Ilen Rovers game. Disappointed to lose the game, but look, heads didn't drop. Probably gave us a bit of more motivation to get going again. So we kind of look at we taking the positives and worked on.
I suppose this Carbery Rangers team, James, over the last number of years, you've shown your character. Like, you're probably the most consistent team in the county championship. You'll have to show that character again in Skib on Saturday night, because we all know what Haven will bring. It's going to be a battle, so you really need to stand up in this game.
Oh, 100%. It's a big game. Look, we know what Castlehaven will bring. Look, I suppose we have been consistent over the last couple of years. We got to 7 or 8 semi-finals. We've only won one final, which, look, as I said before, we just concentrate on the game in hand. We don't look at quarterfinals, semi-finals. We just take one game at a time. Whereas we played the Haven over the last couple of years. They've all been tough battles. I wouldn't expect that this isn't going to be any less. It's going to be a tough physical battle, and look, hopefully we come out of it.
I think since Ross went up senior, James, you played Haven 6 times, and you've won the last 2 as far as I can recall. Do those past battles, will they have any influence on the game Saturday night?
I wouldn't think so, to be honest. Look, there's the panels evolve. Look, there's always going to be local rivalry there, and I suppose people will be talking about the game outside the camps and build it up. But ultimately, look, the panels change on the Castlehaven side and on our own side. The panels change over the last couple of years. So look, there's new people in there. There's new formations, or younger players coming through. So look, the game. Each game is always going to be different, you know.
And I suppose, like you said, like the kind of young fellas have come on board, like Mark Hodden at the Cork under 20, obviously won the All-Ireland there the week before last. But as well as that, Ross, James, you still have that very kind of core experience group, the likes of Seamus Hayes, John Hayes, yourself, Brian Shanahan, Kevin McMahon, fellas like that. Kind of, how much will experience play a part on Saturday night?
Yeah, look, it will play a big part. Look, experience brilliant to have there, I suppose, especially in second half of the game, when games are tight, you always kind of look maybe to the experience first to try and close out the game, but you can't beat the fresh legs, the fresh young legs coming into it, adding that good bit of energy into it, which there's the young fellas like of Mark Hodness, you've the James Reardon, and a lot of under-20s coming into it, which has given us a good bit of injection this year. Castlehaven are probably the same, but yeah, look, the experience. Then so look, we have a few core players there who've been kind of there over the last 8 or 9 years, and have experience in finals, whatever it is. But look, that's great. Maybe just to get a game closed out in this snap, but you can't beat the youth, and I suppose as I said, fresh legs coming to the panel.
Are these the sort of games that you really look forward to, James? You know, like I was saying earlier, like this is Carbery Rangers against Castlehaven. It's knockout football. It's a Saturday night in Skibbereen. There'll be a big crowd there. Kind of, are these the big games that players just look forward to? Like, are you counting down the days this week until we get to Saturday?
Oh, they are 100%. Look, it doesn't really matter who you're playing at this stage of the championship. They're all massive games. You look forward to. And look, this is why you were training since last January. You know, and the hard slogging, and these are the days. These are the kind of games that you be looking forward, you know. As I said, look, it doesn't really matter who you're playing. You just want to get through to the quarterfinals stage. But look, this is what we've been preparing for all year.
And like we've said there as well, kind of obviously Ross and Haven have played many times over the last couple of years. What must you get right on Saturday night to get the better to Haven? Is there any one particular area that you must focus in on, or anything like that, James? Or
I'd say, look, we need to. We need to focus on. They've great wealth of experience as well on their side of it, so I think everyone needs to focus on their own battles. Mm-hmm. It is going to be a physical battle, okay. So I think everyone needs to focus on their own individual patch of the field and try and win their own battles. It's going to be tough. It's going to be a tough slog around the middle. And look, I think whoever's going to pick up the breaking ball and whoever's going to be more composed there, there's not going to be much. It's only going to make people ball between the two teams. But as I said, look, everyone has to win their own battles on the pitch over in Skibbereen.
Brilliant. Come here, James. Thanks for joining us. Best of luck Saturday night.
No bother. Thanks very much, Karen. Thanks.
In this week's Southern Star, get your free careers and courses magazine full of useful advice to help you get ahead. Read about interview techniques, compiling a CV, apprenticeships, jobs in food and tourism, working beyond retirement and lots more. Don't miss your free careers and courses magazine in this week's Southern Star. Your West Cork, your community, your Southern Star.
Now, Kieran, there's loads more GAA news to cover with this time of year being by far one of the busiest for a club action. But before we do that, Cork are into yet another All-Ireland final, with the minors qualifying by beating Mayo 4-12 to 113 last weekend. They'll now meet Galway in the final following their win over Kerry. This is some story considering how they started their year off, Kieran.
It is, Jack. Just go back to May up in Páirc Uí Rinn, the first round of the revamped, I suppose, Munster Minor Football Championship in that Group 2 phase, where Cork were hockeyed, I think it was 16 points by Kerry. And it didn't look too good then, to be quite honest with you. Cork then kind of got back in the horse against Clare. Kind of not a great performance, but it was more about the result there. They needed to win, and that win put them through to the Munster final. The reward for getting through to the Munster final was they're automatically then guaranteed an All-Ireland quarter-final place as well. In the Munster final, we were up there, Jack, that day. That was before the Cork and Kerry Senior game. And the Cork Miners really ran Kerry close. I think only 3 points the difference.
It was a cracking game, cracking finish to the game.
Super game, yeah. Kind of. So within, I think it was 6.5 weeks, they went from losing by 16 points to losing by 3 points. The performance was definitely kind of, it was on an upward curve and a lot better. And manager Bobby Dwyer, while disappointed with the result, he was very pleased with the performance. And what was happening the whole time was Cork were starting to get their strongest team together. They were always missing players. Go back to that first game against Kerry, Jack Lawton of Carbery Rangers was missing. He's come into the midfield since, and he's been very, very strong. Michael O'Neill from Buttevant, he only came on at half time in the Munster minor final. He'd missed out, I think he was out for 3 months through injury. He's back in now, again, a big plus. It was only when Cork got to the All-Ireland minor quarter final against Monaghan, up in, I think that was Tullamore, and that was after the Cork and Tyrone under-20 All-Ireland semi-final. But that minor game was the first time that Cork were injury-free outfield, so they got their strongest team out on the pitch, and they were so impressive that day, Jack. They beat Monaghan, who were the Ulster champions, and what they beat them by the end was 3-19 to 2-13 or 2-10 or something like that. But they were really impressive, and they've carried that form into the All-Ireland minor semi-final last weekend. They beat a fancied Mayo team. And the irony of it is that Cork have lost twice to Kerry in the minor championship this year. Yet it's Cork in the All-Ireland final and Kerry are out, you know. But that's because I suppose it's the beauty of the revamped Munster Minor Football Championship, and they had to change it because over the last couple of years Cork were the team that pushed Kerry more than most. Yet if Cork lost the Munster Minor semi-final, they were out. They had no second chance. So it's just great reward for the Cork Miners, and it's important to know too that I suppose minor football, it's more about development for these players. So these young Cork fellas now will have had 6 games, I think, this year. Am I right? 5 or 6 games, yeah. Which is huge for them, as opposed to if it was under the last couple of years, they might have had 2 games and their season was over. But now they're going to benefit off 6 games this year. So for those young footballers going forward, and many of them will go into the under-20 setup and then hopefully on to senior, kind of this year has been really about their development, and you could see them progress game to game to game, which is superb.
Now, just as a brief aside before we move on, just to make a quick point, isn't it amazing where we're at now with Cork intercounty football, considering where we were 10 or 12 weeks ago, maybe more, 15 weeks ago, we'll say, when that report was published, which we keep talking about. But Cork senior team were on the verge of being relegated to Division 3. Then there was the minor team losing by 16 points to Kerry in the first round of the Munster Championship. And 6 months later, the Cork Senior footballers contested the Super 8s for the first time. The Cork under-20s are All-Ireland champions, and now the Cork minors have a chance to be All-Ireland champions. So it's starting to seem like Cork may well be the number 1 football county in the country.
It's an incredible turnaround, Jack, when you say it like that. I remember Graham Canty back at that launch back in January of the 5-year plan. He was saying that Cork, the senior footballers, are kind of a mid-table Division 2 team, but then they plummeted down to Division 3, and you're like, Jesus, you know, kind of, has this bottomed out yet? But since then, like the performances of the Cork Seniors, like you said, the Cork under-20s, now the Cork Minors, like it's incredible turnaround. And you can just feel that feel-good factor. There's a bit of positivity around Cork football, which is great, you know. Like now for those minors, those Cork Minors, they have an All-Ireland final against Galway on Sunday, September 1st to look forward to. And what a day out that's going to be for those young fellas. And we may as well mention too, Jack, that there's a lot of West Cork interest in this Cork minor team. We have Dan Peat from Clonakilty is in the full back line. From Orhan, we have Joseph O'Shea. The last day against Mayo, Jack Lawton from Carbery Rangers and Kieran Scannell from Carbery Rangers both started. In attack, Jack Cahalan from Castlehaven started the last day, and that's obviously Jack Cahalan from the famous Cahalan dynasty in Castlehaven. Going through the subs as well, Ryan O'Donovan from Barry Rowe came on, Keith O'Driscoll from Gabriel Rangers, Bobby Dwyer, the manager, who's very, very strong West Cork links, and also managed O'Donovan Rossa Senior footballers for a spell as well. So again, like with the Cork Seniors and like with the Cork under-20s, there's a very strong link between West Cork and the Cork Minors, which is great. And even ahead of this game on Saturday night, the game in Skib between Castlehaven and Carbery Rangers, kind of there's a bounce about Cork football now, you know, kind of people should go along to Skibbereen on Saturday night to watch this game. You've Cork Seniors there, you've All-Ireland winning under-20 Cork footballers there, you know. It's a huge game, but it just shows that Cork football is in a lot better place than it was going back a couple of months.
And you mentioned the local interest. It's not all senior club interest though, because there were some big stories that came out of last weekend, Ciaran, between Kilmacabee's drawn game and Cora unfortunately going out.
Yeah, that's the Carbery Junior A Football Championship. So we'll start off with Cora. They were in a quarter-final against St. James's, and Cora conceded a couple of early goals. They just couldn't claw it back, and St. James's go forward and Cora are out, which is a shock. Which really is a shock, because Cora were finalists last year. They took Kilmacabee to replay in the final, and they were fancied to go a long, long way this year. Obviously, they have the trio Driscolls, Kevin, Brian and Colm there, and they have a strong team, but it just wasn't enough against a good St. James's team that now go forward to take on Argideen Rangers in a Junior A football semi-final this Saturday night. So either one of Argideen or St. James's will be in the West Cork final this year, so it's a new name, which is great to see. Then on the other side of the draw, Kilmacabee, the reigning champions, they stuttered and they stumbled against St. Colum's, and they were, I suppose, lucky and unlucky in some ways. St. Colum's really, really battled hard in this game, but Kilmacabee came back and at one point in the second half they outscored Colum's by 8 points to 1 to go 3 points up. But Colum's then got a late goal to kind of force a replay, which is on this Sunday. But you can never write St. Colum's off, even though they weren't fancy going into this game. They're renowned battlers. They really are a tough team. But my suspicions here is that Kilmacabee almost needed this game. They haven't played a championship game in a long, long while, and it's almost to get that dirty petrol out of the system. So I would expect Kilmacabee to win the replay this weekend and kind of kick on from here. So it's going to be pretty interesting. But the junior football is kind of hotting up too, Jack. And before we move on, I better mention too to our friends out in Dunmanway that the Downey senior footballers are in County Senior Football Championship action this Saturday night as well. They're taking on Nemo Rangers in Brinny in a round 3 game at 7 o'clock. Downey's had a superb win against St. Nick's in the opening round, 4-15 to 0-7. The draw could have been a bit kinder to them. They've been paired against Nemo, who were far too strong for Valleys in the opening round. But it's just great to see Downey's not involved in a relegation scrap this year. Nemo will be fancied there, but again, that's another big game. So that's Brinny, 7 o'clock on Saturday night. And also the Bandon Senior Hurlers are in round 3 action in the Senior Hurling Championship again on Saturday night, and that game is in Ovens. The Bandon Hurlers beat Newcestown 117 to 17 points in the opening round a couple of months ago, and they're going to take on a Carrick-Toohill team that has that lost to the Bars heavily in the first round, but then beat Killa. So that's another 2 big senior games this weekend. So the championship action is coming hot and heavy, Jack, at both county level and local level.
And I can only imagine then that it's going to be quite a packed edition of the Star Sports section this week.
Yeah, kind of 24 pages can contain it, so we've had to bump it up. So it's a bumper 28-page sports section this week, and even at that it's kind of creaking, Jack, I'll be quite honest with you. There's so much in there. Obviously the Castlehaven and Carbery Rangers game, that gets a 2-page preview. We've interviews with John Hayes there and Michael Hurley. Also worth noting that the Cork Senior Camogie team is in an All-Ireland semi-final this Saturday evening, and we talked to Inniskeen star Orla Cronin. We have an interview with Orla, looking forward to the big game against Galway. We also carry an interview with Graham Canty. Graham is at the launch of the Play Us GAA app that was kind of relaunched last week. That's an app by Bantry's Mark O'Donovan, and it's actually something we might come back to in the next couple of weeks because it's a superb app. So we have an interview with Graham where he talks about Cork football. We're chock-a-block, Jack, with football matches and hurling matches. I'm not even going to start listening to
football.
It is. There's so much in there between going from Castletown Bear losing to Nemo in the Premier Intermediate football down to the Newcestown under-21 hurlers, hockey in Clonakilty in the under-21A quarter-final on Monday night. So there's loads in there. And we can't forget too, we can't get through this podcast without saying congratulations, Conor Horan. He made his Premier League debut for Aston Villa against Tottenham Hotspur last Saturday night. The result wasn't what they wanted. The Spurs won that game 3-1. But Conor is officially a Premier League footballer. And if you notice, actually, Jack, on Twitter, I think it was Sunday morning.
It was brilliant.
It was absolutely brilliant. It shows like we kind of think these Premier League footballers or these kind of professional athletes, they move in different circles to us. But a Villa fan tweeted Conor, I think it was 4 years ago, wasn't it?
Was it not
5 years ago?
A Plymouth fan from when he was at his Plymouth time?
No, it was actually
an actual Villa fan.
An actual Villa fan, because he mentioned that. But I think it was in a tweet where Conor was saying that he'd aspirations of playing in the Premier League, or
he'd given an interview where his ambition in his career was to eventually play in the Premier League.
And one of these
Twitter trolls.
Yeah, he kind of quickly kind of quipped, kind of back in your lane, Conor. You know, kind of you're not at that level. Obviously Conor is, because he's now a Premier League footballer. But Conor remembered that tweet from, I think it was 4 or 5 years ago. It was incredible. He remembered that tweet, and Conor posted a reply to that Twitter troll on Sunday morning, kind of almost like Kieran Donaghy to Joe Brawley, kind of.
What do you think of that?
What do you think of that? But just shows it's an incredible story, and it's one we've covered here many times, about Conor's rise from the Town Park in Bandon to now a Premier League footballer. But
so just for any listeners out there, if you ever do get the chance to meet Conor Horan, but you choose your words wisely, because like an elephant, he doesn't forget.
So like you said there, Jack, plenty in this week's sports section. So in the shops from Thursday morning. When you're thinking of value for money this week, I don't think it gets any better than the start this Thursday, does it?
It doesn't, because it's only €2.20, and that's every week. And when you consider the ticket prices for the All-Ireland final on Sunday, where it's €90 even if you're up at the top tier of the Canal End, and it's €90 if you're on the halfway line in the Hogan stand, that's not value. What is value is €2 a week for the $2.20 for the Southern Star, and what's even bigger value, it's less than €2 a week when you purchase it online via southernstar.ie/ePaper.
So that means instead of an All-Ireland ticket, this is my quick maths now, you could buy 40 Southern Stars.
Yeah.
Like, you could put your 90 quid to better use, couldn't you?
You could. Well,
unless you were a Kilkenny fan.
But just on that, I want to get your opinion on that. Like, something has to change with regards ticketing for All-Ireland finals. It's vulgar, I would call it. It's €90 across for every seat in Croke Park, and there's so many bad seats in Croke Park. All the seats in the Canal End or the Davin stand or whatever you want to call it are terrible, and they're the same price as the good seats in the Hogan and the Cusack. It's archaic, is what I would call it. You don't go to a game at a World Cup or a European Championships or an Aviva rugby game where the worst seat in the house is the same price as the best seat in the house. It's 2019. Yeah. Get a grip.
But they see the All-Ireland final, Jack, as a money-making machine.
That's a disgrace. That's a disgrace.
But it's like, look at the semi-final on last Sunday. The Kerry Tyrone game. Was it 33,000 for an All-Ireland semi-final?
But the tickets are overpriced as well.
But it's pathetic in terms of what you say that the Kerry fans and the Tyrone fans didn't travel, like. But to get 33,000, like, kind of, the stadium was half empty. Like, there was no, you could hear a bit of an atmosphere. But compared to the night before when Dublin and Mayo, and that's the Dublin fans, I know, they kind of packed out Croke Park. but they have 33,000 at an All-Ireland.
Who are they catering to for All-Ireland final day? They're not catering to your regular hurling and football fans.
No.
It's the corporate clients that you're catering to, the people who don't go to a game all year. And I know I'm repeating things that have been said on the air for the last 20 years and that have been said on Twitter and Facebook and in every newspaper in the country this week, but I just felt like venting. It's actually disgraceful. I cannot, and I never took it into account when I was younger because usually I was going, Joe, with my father, so it was probably something that he had to worry about. But
I actually saw people on...
You could not bring 3 children.
No. That's exactly what I was going to say there. I saw people on Twitter this week kind of saying if you wanted, like, if 2 parents wanted to bring 2 kids, what's that, 4 by 90, it's €360 just for tickets alone.
Yeah.
And then you see some responses then, I know social media isn't this was the greatest platform to be judging, but some people are saying, keep the kids at home and all this sort of stuff. But like for a kid, to go to an All-Ireland final for the atmosphere and stuff, it's an incredible experience and stuff. And so if you're talking a family of 4, £360 just to get in and sit your arse down in a seat, not to mention the overpriced food, not to mention the travel, not to mention whatever else you want.
What you say about not being able to bring kids, like the All-Ireland final, I've been to many All-Ireland finals, luckily, and the one I remember most vividly is my first one, like when I was 7 or 8 years old, when I don't know if I can't remember how much the tickets were back then, but I was lucky enough to go regardless. So that notion of keeping the kids at home and
nonsense.
Leaving it to the adults to enjoy is the most bizarre argument I've ever heard.
And it actually goes against what the GA is about.
Who was that made? Was that I won't say because I'm not actually 100% sure who said it. I don't want to libel anyone. But
it goes against what the GA is about. I know people would say, all the money that they make off this will go back into the grassroots and this. I get that to an extent, but £90 for a child's ticket is absolutely ridiculous.
Like the only other like mainstream sport that this really happens in is like the Super Bowl, where it's completely overpriced for the final, whereas throughout the season it's people, I know it's still expensive, it's America, everything's expensive, but the Super Bowl they go big and they make as much money as humanly possible, and the GAA for all intents and purposes are copying that model, which like the last thing you want to be doing is following the footsteps of the NFL. I would say that should be the complete opposite of what a sporting organisation that is amateur in name anyway, it's amateur.
But they know they'll get people in. They know there's a huge demand.
But this doesn't matter.
They could charge €100 if they raise the price to €100 ticket next year.
It'd still be sold out.
It'd still be sold out.
Yeah, you see it in the NFL and you see it in the GAA. And maybe actually I'm probably giving FIFA and UEFA too much credit because it's probably the same for the Champions League final. Quick
word, so Jack, do you buy a ticket for the All-Ireland hurling final this weekend?
I have two Hill tickets, which were €45 pop still. That's overpriced for the Hill, especially when it's going to be spilling rain and you're going to be surrounded by an awful amount of drunk young men and women who aren't paying any attention to the game itself. But they're having the time of their life. I don't hold that against them because I was them a time before.
Back in your younger days, before you matured, before you grew up.
But no, I got my hands on a Hill ticket because €90 it's too expensive for this man.
So can Kilkenny do it?
Oh, I don't know. I don't really mind.
Anyway, again, thank you very much for listening, everyone. So we'll be back at the same time next week. So if you enjoy these shows, please make sure to rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Acast, Stitcher, or wherever else you listen to the show.
Up the cats.
In this week's Southern Star, get your free Careers and Courses magazine full of useful advice to help you get ahead. Read about interview techniques, compiling a CV, apprenticeships, jobs in food and tourism, working beyond retirement and lots more. Don't miss your free Careers and Courses magazine in this week's Southern Star. Your West Cork, your community, your Southern Star.